Hello and welcome to Lisa T Creations. I'm Delisa behind Lisa T Creations, and I welcome you to the channel today. Whether you're a returning subscriber or a new person, welcome. In today's video, we are going to make a simple apron. So stay tuned and we'll go through everything you need and all the steps to make a simple apron. Let's go over the tools and supplies you're going to need to make this apron. First of all, you are going to need a yard of the outer fabric. In this case, I'm using some chickens from Walmart. And then you're going to need a yard for the lining. You're also going to need a 1-inch square loop. I'm using gold. You can use whatever color complements your apron fabric. And then you need a slider bar. Again, I'm using a 1-inch slider bar. And then you're going to need some complementary thread. For the outside, I'm going to do black. And for the bobbin, I'm going to do this brown because it matches the lining. And then you're also going to need something to use as a point turner. I'm using this scoring tool. You need something to mark your fabric with. In this case, I'm using an iron erasable marking pen. You need a rotary cutter, a ruler for measuring your, to help you make straight cuts. And then you need some wonder clips, and that's it on, well, you need a pattern piece, but I'm going to show you how to make that pattern piece to help you cut the arm out. So let's get started. Hi there, Editing Lisa here. When I first started creating this apron, I created it because I had a customer order for an apron. Well, both of my cameras died at the same time, so I had to finish filming this with the purple fabric. And so I just wanted to stick in some comments here. I went ahead and left in the rooster fabric part because it did show a bit of the process. Okay, let's go over what you're going to need for this product. Now you're going to need at least 1 yard of both your outer fabric and your lining. Now for the outer fabric, you are going to use 95% of that yard. So if you're afraid of making a mistake, buy yourself 2 yards just to give yourself some wiggle room. Now the outer dimensions of the outer fabric for the main body is going to be 33 by 14, and also for the lining. So you need a lining piece that's 33 by 14 and an outer piece that's 33 by 14. Now for the straps, you're going to need 2 pieces that are 3 inches wide and 36 inches long. These do not need lining. Now for the neck strap, you're going to need one that's 3.5 inches wide and at least 38 inches long to make it adjustable. And you're also going to need a piece of interfacing to match that neck strap. You're also going to need one square that is 3.5 by 3, and a piece of interfacing for that is also 3.5 by 3, and that will be the main assembly for the body. Now when you cut the patterns out, save your pieces that you cut out for the arms, because we're going to make the pockets out of those. So that is everything you need to make this project. So the first step in starting the apron after you've cut all your pieces is to cut out the part where the arm goes. Now I'm going to be using this pattern piece that I made a long time ago to do this, but I'm going to also show you how to do it if you don't have an apron on hand already to make a pattern piece. So first step is to trace this line right here. And I'm going to do this with this white marking pen. Okay. Second step is to cut on this line. Now don't throw this piece away because we're going to use it to make pockets with. So I'm just going to cut this out. Okay, and you want to follow this pattern with both the lining piece and the outer fabric piece. So now I'm going to show you how to do this if you do not have a pattern piece that you can use. Okay, so the first step in doing this without a pattern piece is to mark from top to bottom 10 inches. And I'm going to mark it with my erasable pen. And then the next step is we want to go 8 inches from the outside seam over. And then we want to mark that as well. And we only need to mark from the top to the line. Okay. So when you're finished, we'll have something that looks like this. I'm using this old platter to help me round this out. Now you want to put the edge pretty much flush with the edge over here, and then bring it to where it meets the edge over here, and then you're just gonna wrap round, make that curve just like that. So if you do this same procedure for the top as you do the bottom, these will meet evenly. Or you can use this piece to cut the top piece, or you can cut them at the same time. Hi, Editing Lisa here again. So I did forget a really important step when making the neck strap for the apron. So I'm going to show you that important step first before we move on with the next step, so you will know that you need to do this step when you're creating the neck. Okay, so to start the neck strap, we need to finish one of the ends. So what we're going to do before we fold it in half is fold over that end 1/4 of an inch and press that in place. And once you fold over the end 1/4 of an inch, then you would do the normal process that follows, where you fold it in half and then bring the sides to meet the half. And then when you fold them over again, that's going to give you a finished end. So, because this side is going to be visible, so you want that finished end. Okay, so the first thing that you're going to do to get started on this is to attach your interfacing to the neck strap and the piece that's going to hold the loop on the top of the apron. And so you're just going to, these things have a bumpy side where the glue is and a smooth side. You're going to want to attach the bumpy side to the wrong side of the fabric and then press that down. Now the heat from the iron melts the glue, and then when you're finished it should look something like this. So you're going to do that to both pieces. Now I didn't want to, my strap is actually like 40.5 inches long, and I didn't want to cut my interfacing that long. So I just cut pieces. So I'm going to put them down. I'm going to overlap them just a little bit. So when I iron them down, it's going to be pretty seamless. So whatever interfacing you're using, follow the manufacturer's instructions. Okay, and so once you have that together and the interfacing is down, we've got to start with the next step. So for this, you're going to need some wonder clips. So what we're going to do is we're going to fold this in half where the two edges meet, and we're just going to press that down. And we're going to do that all the way down to the end. And then once you have it pressed all the way down to the end, you're going to open it back up and fold the one seam over to the middle, just like that. Just like that. And then press it all the way down. And then you're going to do the same to the other side. And then what you're going to do is fold those two sides together so they look just like this. And I use some Wonder Clips to hold the two sides together. And you can press it again to keep it flat. And I'm just going to Wonder Clip them together. Okay, and now it's ready to sew. So what we're going to do when we sew is sew all the way down one seam, turn around, and then sew all the way up the other one. So for the interfacing, that's for the loop holder, you want to make sure that the long way is the 3.5 inches this way, and then you're going to fold it in half. And then do exactly what we did for the other one. And now we're going to take these to the sewing machine and sew them together. So I have adjusted my stitch length to 3.5, and I have moved my needle all the way over to the right so I can use the edge of my press-up foot as a guide. And we're going to stitch this just about 1/8 of an inch from the edge. And I have used a coordinated thread to do this. So we are just going to sew these two seams together now. And let's do what happened here. Okay, a little bit of technical difficulties. Oops, that's not good. Alrighty then. Finishing up this little square. Okay, so you're going to trim your threads, and when you fold it over, the raw edges are going to be inside the seam line, and then this is going to hold the little loop. So this is finished. Now we're going to work on the straps, and the straps are going to be very similar to what we've been doing for this. Okay, for the straps, it is the same concept that we used for the next strap. We're just going to fold them over in half. All that's different is that there's no interfacing on these, and because we want this tie straps to be a little more flexible than the next strap. The next strap, we don't want it to wrinkle up and pinch our neck when we're wearing it. We want it to be comfortable, so it needs interfacing to help it do that. And these are going to be just a little bit smaller width-wise when we're finished sewing them, because they don't need to be that wide for the ties. So again, once we have them sewn in half, fold them in half again. And fold it in half again. Just like that. And then fold them in half again. Okay, so they look a little bit like this. Now, you gotta decide which side is the bottom and which side is the top. The top edge of these doesn't, it's okay if it's gonna be raw. But on these bottom edges, we need to do something a little special. We're gonna fold that at least 1/4 inch up and iron that down. And then fold it flat again. Now you can hide some of those corners by cutting off just a little bit of this edge, but you want it where the seam on the end is not going to be raw. And you can also make these pointy if you want to. I don't usually, because I haven't figured out how to do that, to be honest. But then you would just wonder clip this down, and then you're going to go to your sewing machine and sew down one side, and then close this seam right here so there's no raw edges visible, and then sew all the way up on the other side, just like we did for the next strap. So I'm going to do all of that off camera, and then I'll meet you back to do the next step. So the next part of the process to get this ready to go is now we have to sew the line pockets. So you're going to take one of the back pieces, and one of the front pieces, and put them right sides together and line up all the seams. You can pin this if you want to, and then you're going to sew around a 1/2 inch around the outside perimeter, and you're going to leave a space at the top for turning, because we're going to put a decorative seam at the top, so we want to leave that opening at the top versus it's much easier than putting it on the side or on the round part. So I am going to clip this together and then take us to the sewing machine. Okay, for this, I have set my needle all the way over to the left because you want about a 1/2 inch seam allowance for this, like everything else with this. You want a 1/2 inch instead of a 1/4 inch. And then I also put my stitch length to 2.5. Which I'm using the outside of my presser foot as a guide for the 1/2 inch because it's about a 1/2 inch from the outside of my presser foot to the needle. And so for here, you do want to double stitch or back stitch a couple of times because that seam is gonna get some pressure when we turn it right side out. And more stitch. I want to go a little bit slower around this curve. These curves are a lot harder than straight lines. So just go slow. And make sure you back stitch at the end. Alrighty, there we have it. So I'm going to take you down to the cutting mat again and show you the next step. Okay, so there is more than one way to do this next step. I am going to trim the corners. So you want to trim the corners off. And you can trim the seam down to a 1/4 inch if you want to do that. Now on this round part, you can just make snips with your scissors to make it a little bit easier for it to lie flat when we turn it right side out. Or you can do like I'm going to do and just use your Pecan shears. Pecan shears make this job a lot easier. I'm going to leave the seams at the top. Alright, and once you have trimmed all the seams, then you are going to turn this right sides out. And then to start off with, I'm just going to use my fingers to straighten out the corners. Okay, and then I'm going to use this stick to go in and straighten out that curve. And maybe put a little finer point on those corners. You can use whatever you have. I just don't have a point turner, so anyway, when you're done, it should look something like this. Now we are going to press this, and then we're going to sew across the top at least once. You can put a double seam in there, or you can use a decorative stitch across the top, but that is going to seal that. But you need to press this first completely flat. So I'm going to go and do that, and then we'll work on the next. So for this next step, you need to make sure that your outer fabric is pressed flat and that you pressed out the seam in the middle, because we don't really need that seam in the middle anymore. And so what we're going to do next is pin the pockets in place. So for this, you're going to need your 6-inch ruler if you have one, and we're going to place this ruler 6 inches from the top. For this, you probably will need 2 rulers because you want them really, really straight all the way across. And once you're sure of your placement, now it's time to pin those pockets in place. So you're going to need pins instead of clips, because for this you can't use clips. Now we're going to go 6 inches down from where we're going to put the handles on this, and then 4 inches, maybe, let's see, maybe 5 inches over from the edge, and you're going to put the straight line of your pocket on that 5-inch mark, and then you're going to pin that in place with your pins. Okay, make sure you put one in the middle just to keep it from moving around. Then you're going to do the same thing for the other side. You're going to put that at the 5-inch mark and make sure this top is lined up with your rulers, and then pin it in place. Okay, so now since these pockets are going to take a lot of stress, you're going to want to put double seams. So you're going to start at the top and go all the way around the bottom of the pocket and all the way up. And then you're going to go over 2 stitches and then go all the way back down and around back to the other side. And you're going to do that for both pockets. I'm going to do this off camera because it's a little bit awkward since there's so much fabric in the way. And then I will meet you back here for the next steps. So the next step is we're going to attach the neck strap and the loop holder to the top of the apron. So for this you're going to need, of course, your loop and the little square that you made, and then your neck strap and a ruler. So to do this, we're going to go 3/4 of an inch away from the edge. And on your neck strap, I did forget to close one end, so I tried to go back and do an editing so you could see. So you're going to choose the end that has the raw edges and you're going to line it up to the top. Whichever side you want to face up needs to be facing the apron, and then you're just going to line those up 3/4 of an inch from the edge. So and then you can either pin these in place or use a clip, whichever one you choose. And then you're going to repeat that process for the other side. But instead of doing the strap end, you're going to do the loop holder and put your loop through that and fold it in half together, and then pin that in place or clip it, whichever one you have. And then we are going to baste these in place, but because these are stress points, I'm going to go back and forth over these a couple of times. Do the basting stitch inside your seam line, but go over it back and forth a few times just to reinforce these because they are very heavy-duty stress points. Okay, so when you've got these basted in place, they should look something like this. Okay. And so now we've got to baste the straps in place. So you want to start at the corner. You want to take the unfinished side and put it 3/4 of the way down from the top, so about right here, because you want to keep this out of the top seam allowance, which is why you go 3/4 of the way down, and then just pin that in place so it doesn't move. And so you're going to do the same thing on the other side. Find the end of the strap with the raw edge and go 3/4 of the way down. And make sure the ends are even on both sides. And then just pin that in place. So now what we're going to do is baste these in place the same way we did with the neck strap. So this is your last opportunity. Make sure that you have trimmed all your threads out. And now we're going to prepare this to sew the two pieces together. So we want the straps to stay stable but out of the way, so we don't actually sew them into the seam line. And so make sure that the top right here is it stays the way it should be, so it's not crooked when we sew that seam. So you're gonna have to put it at a little bit of an angle, but make sure the top stays straight like it's supposed to. And then we need to pin these in place, because the last thing we want is for these straps to get sewn into the seam line, so we have to tear it out and do it again. So I pin one right here at the top and then one at the very end. Now you're going to repeat this process for the ties. Again, you need to keep it straight but out of the seam line. So pin it in place up here. And then turn it and pin it in place again in the middle where it's not going to get sewn into the seam line. And do that with both sides. Now here's where it gets a little fiddly, and because we have these straps in the way, the backing is not going to lie flat against the top, so we are really going to have to be very careful when we pin these two things together, or actually I'm going to clip it together rather than pin it. So we have all of our straps pinned down and out of the way, so now we're going to take our backing and match those seams up. And pin this in place. And we're going to do this all the way around. But again, keep in mind that this is not going to lie flat, so you're going to have to pull those seams together rather than what we would normally do if these straps were not in the way. So I'm going to clip this all together, and then I will meet you at the very end. So what I've done is marked about well, I guess that's like 5 inches width, and I've used my red Wonder Clips as a reminder to tell me to stop and leave an opening. But we're going to use a 1/2 inch seam, and we're going to go all the way around the apron, leaving this open, and we're going to do that twice because this is going to be what holds the lining and the outer fabric together, so we want it to be strong, so we're going to go around twice. Okay, so I have put my needle all the way over to the left so I can use the edge of my presser foot as a guide when I'm sewing this, and then my stitch length, as you can see, is going to be 2.5. and so I'm going to start at that first little clip right there, that first red clip. And I'm going to back stitch here, and because this seam is going to take a little bit of pressure, so I'm going to back stitch a little bit and make sure my two edges are even and together. Okay, on the corner I'm going to stop 1/2 inch from the edge, lift my presser foot, and turn. Get to that 1/2 inch, I'm going to pivot. I go real slow on the curves. Curves are not that easy to do. Okay, so we are coming up to the top of the apron now, and now we are going to reach where our neck strap attaches, so we are going to back stitch here as well, just to reinforce that, because it's going to take a lot of pressure. So the tie on the other side is perhaps the hardest one you're going to have to do, because there's a lot of bulk. Just go really slow. I had a little trouble with this because I forgot to move the little loop out of the way, so I almost hit it with my needle, so I had to back up a little bit, but that's okay. And so when you get to this area, because it is bulky, you just want to go slow, but you do want to back stitch there. Just so everything can be reinforced. Now, because there's not a lot of clearance there, you need to make sure that that loop is out of the way so you do not sew over it. So just go slow until you get past that loop. And I'm having problems hitting the seam on this side. So now we are coming to that next strap. So again, like all the other straps, you want to backstitch over it. End, you do want to backstitch. Now it is optional for you to put that second seam in and go again. I am going to go one more time around. I'm going to go make this move the needle over a couple of notches and then do another seam, and then I'm going to do that off camera, and then I will meet you back here. So before we turn this right side out, we need to trim all the corners. So we're going to do this first and just trim the corners. Now, once you have all the corners trimmed, you want to trim this, or put snips in the arm circle, or use some pinking shears. I'm going to use the pinking shears. You don't have to do it all the way around, just on the part that curves the most. So that's what it looks like. I'm going to do the other side that way as well. Okay, once you have that done, it is time to turn this right side out. Now be careful, because speaking from experience, once you reach your hand in there, there's going to be pointy pins, so you want to be careful. And I of course have some threads I can catch, so make sure you don't have any loose threads. And then we're going to reach into that hole and just turn it right side out. Okay, so before we do anything else, we need to take these pins out so we don't poke ourselves. Alright, one more on that side. And one more on this side. Okay, so now we need to poke out the corners. So okay, put your fingers in there and poke out that corner just like that. And the same on this side. And where the straps are. And that last corner over here. And over here. Now, if you have a point turner, you can do that. I don't have a point turner, so I'm going to use this scoring tool and to kind of go in and poke those corners out just a little bit more. If you are satisfied with more rounded corners, you can skip this part. Okay, so now I'm going to take this over to the ironing board and iron it flat. Okay, so when you are pressing this, you want to make sure that all the purple from the backing is not visible. So make sure that you roll those seams and press all the purple to the back. Well, the plain purple anyway. And you want to do that all the way around the edges. Okay, so now once we have it all the edges seamed, now we're going to top stitch this around twice. First time is simply to close this bottom. Second time is just to reinforce that so that the lining doesn't really separate from the outer fabric. So I'm going to meet you back at the sewing machine so we can do that. Down here just a little bit before the opening, I've changed my stitch length to 3.5, and I'm going to move my needle all the way over to the right, so we get just about 1/8 of an inch from the edge. And then we're just going to top stitch all the way around this apron. So once you've made it all the way around, you can leave it like this. You do not have to put a second seam in it, or you can turn, or you can lift your needle up, put it over a couple of points, and then do a second seam. And that's what I'm gonna do, and then I'm gonna give it a final press, and we're gonna do the reveal shot. But I'm gonna do that. So now we're gonna go over how to attach the strap to the apron, or the neck strap. So you want the neck strap to be facing up, and then you need your slider buckle, and you're going to put it through the back side of the slider, bring it over the slider bar, and through the other side. So it looks like this. And so now you're going to take the end and slide it through the loop. Now this part is a little tricky, so you want to give yourself a lot of slack, and then you're going to pull some slack out so it looks something like this. Because now we have to put the end between the strap and the bar. Then bring it through to the other side. So it's going to look something like this. And you want to give yourself enough room. Now if you finished your edges, you do not have to do this step, but since I did not finish the edges, I'm going to bend it over. And then we're going to sew it down. This is what it looks like. Yours will not have this if your end is finished. You just got to give yourself a lot of space to work here. And once you have enough space and you've separated it where you can put this down underneath your presser foot, and then you're going to sew around it and then sew an X. Just like, I mean, you can see the needle marks. I had to take this apart so I could refilm this part, but you're just going to sew an X and sew it around, and kind of stitch in the ditch right there and reinforce this. So go over it more than once because this is a stress point. And so once you do that, this apron is finished, and now let's look at the reveal. So this is what the finished apron looks like. That's a look at it on. So I'm going to put it down on the table and let you look at it on the table now. Just take it from the top. So this is what that finished buckle will look like. And this is the little loop up here. And the straps. I mean, it's just a really cute, simple apron pattern that is very beginner friendly. Okay, so if you made it this far, I really appreciate your time and attention, and I hope that you really got something out of this video and that you were able to make this apron. They're very fun aprons, and there's very little waste when you're making an apron like this. So I invite you to like and subscribe to the channel again, and stay tuned for the next video. And again, thank you so much for your time and attention. I appreciate you.